Welcome back to another video within my survival build world, where today we are overlooking my starting home balcony for hopefully the last time, as today we are addressing a problem I have had in this world since it started. That being, I'm still living out of this starter house that I built within the first week of this world ever starting. It's not a horrible problem, really. Of course, ideally, I have a nice place to live with survival-friendly setups readily available, but I haven't really needed that setup as those elements are scattered everywhere around the pond. There's a super smelter under the hill over there. My buddy is currently constructing an auto sorter storage in the castle. If I need to sleep, I'll just slap a bed down or just have a bed set up where I'm working. I haven't had a proper village set up since the beginning, but that's something I have a fun idea for that will be totally separate from potential home bases. Essentially, there really isn't a need for a true home base, except for one little thing that kind of bothers me. See, I am creating this world. This is my vision, my ideas. Maybe not an ideal place to live, all things considered, but all I have been doing is putting down pieces in my Lego world. How do I say this to not sound weird? I want to live in this world. Even though in the grand scheme of things, it's an empty, lifeless world. Especially within my village, I am building a story, and I want to be a part of it. That doesn't mean that I'm about to go get into a hardcore roleplay situation. I don't want to do that, nor would I be good at that, but I want to build something that is for me, that is what I want based on this fantasy I am creating, with the intent of exploring the idea of how I personally would interact with this world, who I would ideally want to be in this world. Sounds very roleplay, but I'm still not exactly going to do that, but I hope you get the idea. I'll explain more later because I'm sure you would like to see what I have planned today because we have a lot of work to do. The place we are going to be working is on the last mostly untouched hill surrounding the basin, as this is the original site that was in mind for an actual home base location almost 2 years ago now, before I started the YouTube, and I'll be addressing the cherry in the room later because to start, I need to flatten quite a big space here. And while I do that, I would like to do a talk over time-lapse story time segment to give you all my inspiration and just everything I have in mind going into this build, as I think I have a lot more in my mind than I usually do when I tell you all my inspiration. So join me in the sky as I tell the tale of how I turned my inspirational rut around. Of course, I'm sure some to most of you all watching don't care, so if you want to get to the build, I will be including timestamps to easily skip over to the fun time-lapse. But for those who like to listen to random garbage, the last couple videos I had mentioned that I had been struggling to come up with ideas for this world and therefore this channel, and I don't want to work on something half-assed for a video that I don't care about. There's love and excitement put into every project I put out, and that is really difficult because I also want to keep it fresh, make something that I believe is still at least a little of interest for you all watching. And as of the summer, that mentality left me quite heavily pondering about what's next, and I couldn't think of anything. Nothing new to work on, nothing to expand on. Couldn't even think of something worth half-assing. It made me reconsider the scale and scope of what I feel I need to be able to have a personally satisfying product for you, which you should have seen in my last video. Basically chill on putting all my brainpower and inspiration into one video every 2 weeks. A few smaller scale but still fun projects are something I should be and am getting comfortable with uploading. But I knew getting the inspiration for a real project like today that is big in scope and scale, I just needed to get that one spark for that ball to get rolling that helps bloom into other ideas. That spark came from an opportunity I took a bit ago in October, where I took a quick 2-day trip to Orlando to check out the new Universal Park to meet my hero, as well as check out their Halloween Horror Nights for the first time because they presented the opportunity to meet my other hero. Without it intending to be, both became pretty large sparks of inspiration and direction for what I want to do. One quite a bit more directly than the other, but I'll start with Horror Nights. I've mentioned a couple of times before this that I'm very interested in my village going in a horror themed direction, but I didn't really know how to do that or what that even meant. But walking through the houses gave me the perspective that I needed, that in a horror context, I don't really care for the violence, the jumps, the thrills, but that I really enjoy the sets and the environments that are created for these horror scenarios. Something about the weirdness, the time periods, the architectural styles used for these stories. They're all so very intriguing to me in such a way that I'm unable to put into words. Maybe it's the chaos, maybe it's the colors, maybe it's the unique, fantastical reality. I don't know, but that experience has given me a lot of direction for that horror feel I want to work with moving forward that will be heavily applied to the interior of the project we're working on today. And yes, taking a solo 4-hour flight to see Freddy Fazbear was worth it. Now, the direct inspiration of today's build is found within the new Universal Park, Epic Universe. I was really excited for this part to open, especially for the Super Mario section, as well as the Dark Universe, which we'll touch on in a moment. And I am so glad I jumped on the opportunity to check it out so soon after it opened. The Mario stuff was a blast, and it's also well themed and carefully crafted. Actually, I don't think it's very well crafted with Florida weather in mind, but the game bits were a lot of fun, and I got to meet my hero, Donkey Kong. It's all fulfilled immersive potential that is currently missing from the other Universal parks. If you've ever been, you probably know what I mean. Anyways, this isn't a review, so I'm moving on to the reason I'm doing this segment. Many lines of dialogue later. The biggest inspiration that I was super excited for, that went above and beyond expectations, was the section themed after the classic Universal monsters, and the experience from entering the area, walking through the village of Darkmoor, to the flagship attraction, the Frankenstein experiment, which was incredible, was so inspiring to me with the European Gothic-ish style architecture and those horror set pieces I was talking about. I mentioned I needed that little spark of inspiration to get the ball rolling, but this Dark Universe themed experience sent that ball flying. Nothing, however, stood out to me more than the facade for the flagship attraction, that being Frankenstein's Manor itself. It has such a strong sense of creepiness, it's imposing, it's big, and it fills the skyline so well. And the Victorian Gothic architecture, I struggle to point to a specific architecture style, and I apologize for that. It's so appealing, and the central tower is menacing. It's the kind of thing that I decided that I would like to live in. That style is pretty conveniently close to what I have going already in my village, so since I got home from that trip in the beginning of October, I have been working hard on designing my personal home, heavily based on Frankenstein's Manor, and I'm super excited to show you what I have done. Before we do that though, I am going to hop back onto the server and properly introduce the build. So we have a nicely flattened out space. As you can see, the project is going to be quite big, and I hate flattening mountains. It takes so long and my wrist starts to hurt, but it's taken care of, and now I have a fresh supply of dirt and stone, something I am actually only now running out of since I flattened the mountain last year for Doom Base. I've started gathering my resources, a nice wide selection from the grayscale, my favorite. Now based on all of that, which I just said, I would like to tell you what my character in this world is and what we'll be building. I decided, partially based on Frankenstein's Manor, that the archetype I would like to fill in this world is that of the monster hunter. The point of the Frankenstein experiment is that Dr. Frankenstein, with Frankenstein's monster, is attempting to capture the biggest and meanest monsters from the classic Universal monster days, notably Dracula. I just think that's a fun archetype to work with. When I do my interior, it will give me a strong theme to work with, and of course, what better monster hunter than the 6-foot crustaceous monster itself? I'll be living in a cursed manor, once again, based on Frankenstein's Manor, but before I can do that, I need to address the cherry blossom in the room. For what I am pretty sure is the first time in this world, I'm going to be taking down a build, and not just any build, one of the first builds I built in this world. The idea was that this originally was going to be my home base. My big home base build that I live in that's partially connected to the village that I only had small ideas for at the time. But I gave it a good start and not much else. I like the idea still, being a circular manor with the oversized cherry blossom growing out, but I didn't give myself room to expand. There's barely any space for interior, and even then, what would I do for an interior in there? The cherry blossom itself was never even finished, as I didn't really like the direction it was going. I'm pretty sure actually I stopped building the cherry blossom because I intended on straight up redoing it. The build is kind of awkwardly placed, and at the end of the day I have no use for it, no attachment to it other than the fact that I built it early on, and now it's going to be in the way, so as much as I'd like to keep it for historical value, it's gotta go. Bitter send-off is out of the way. I am ready to get building. I'll kick off the time lapse by tearing this thing down, and as soon as it's gone, I'll finally, after 2 years of this world's existence, I'm finally going to be building a place to call home. Let's do it. As of recording, it is December the 2nd. For perspective, I started working on this thing around October the 12th. And I finally have the front half done. This is definitely up there when it comes to timelines, but I'm so happy that it is here because let me tell you, I've been anticipating showing it off for a while now. I neglected the back for this one quite heavily, pretty intentionally. I don't know how expansive my interiors are going to be yet, and I'm glad I didn't even make an undetailed back because so far, my interior designing is far exceeding the footprint of what would have been the back. But yeah, full transparency, no back because I am designing interiors right now. Let's talk about the build though. As you can see, it very much is heavily based on Frankenstein's Manor from the village of Darkmoor. As the central tower though, it is my own thing. I use various German and Victorian manors as inspiration and, okay, let's talk about it. The thing is built at a complete diagonal. I have it in my mind that if I'm going to use heavy inspiration, like I have here, that I need to do something to either make it a challenge or unique in my own way, and the way I did that, the way I challenged myself for this build, was to build on the diagonal. And let me tell you, it was a pain. Despite how difficult it was to make it work, I am super satisfied with how it turned out, and the way it sits on the skyline because of its angle is just perfect, as even though it's on the corner of a corner mountain in Minecraft, it still is able to be pointed into the basin, and I really love that. The other major change up from the original reference is that the top of the tower was just perfectly shaped to be a clock tower. In the original building, it's just like a room with a smallish window in the front, but I went all in on the big clock tower, and I'll be real, I might have a small addiction to clock tower based builds. This one is special though because, as you can see, since we are viewing at nighttime, the clock face just pops out like nobody's business, since I made it totally out of frog light, especially exaggerated because I framed it with such a dark palette, which is what I want to talk about next. I had to be quite deliberate with my color palette. Of course, I went with the grayscale, which, if not careful, very closely resembles the palette of the Doom base, thus becoming repetitive. What's nice about the Doom base though is that I pretty much entirely avoided using blacks and generally darker grays in its palette, as well as no signs of any wood, so while at its core they share the same light gray tuff, the darker blackstone and deep slate with the dark oak heavily highlighting the tuff gives it its own very distinctive look. An interesting choice I made that really helped out the jank from the angle was essentially building an outline into the build. I used the deep slate as my roof color. You get that dingly look with the tiles, but I thought it blended really awkwardly when the shape changed. Like, you see this bit bends backwards before going out again, and the roof from there looked really awkward. Same with the tower roofs, so essentially these bits of polished blackstone have a very subtle bluish hue to them, and it's just different enough to where you get this outline without outright having a different color. It's very cool, and I straight up don't think the angle in the roofs would work without it, to the point where I was pretty close to redoing the whole thing before I tried the outline. Also, the way it highlights the clock tower roof makes it look like cat ears. Don't tell anyone, but my haunted house unintentionally has cat ears. Which is another thing I hope comes through on the design. She is looking haunted. Like, in the context of the village, being at the central plaza and looking up here, there's no way you don't go, yeah, that thing's haunted. And that's good, I want to live in a haunted house. As for the interior, I do have the front grand entrance ready to go, but unfortunately, I do not have time to get to it today, so next episode will probably be getting that done, as well as getting started on the front lawn here. I don't want it to be sitting on stone like this for long, and I've got some fun ideas for how I want to do the mountain space, because I want this manor to encapsulate the whole mountain, and just from the shape of the flattened terrain, I'm already getting ideas. I think this area around here would be cool as a big courtyard with maybe a fountain statue thing over here. And the shape of the terrain already gives a clear direction for a walkway to eventually link up with the bridge and eventually the village path. I left a little platform that the cherry blossom was built on because I want to build a small memorial to what was once here, and a little common townsfolk space separate from the manor would be nice to have up here. And over here, where I have a big batch of firefly bushes that are for future surprise purposes, I want to do a nice garden with totally no twist in mind at all. The big skyline opening here is probably going to be home to something pretty special that I designed quite a while ago that I just haven't found a space for. Essentially what I'm saying is that the inspiration is flowing again, and I have a lot of things that I'm super excited to work on again, which I'm so happy about. Another point for that, I was talking about interiors. Ideally, I would have this place live up to its purpose of being my home and have a big living space for myself, and that would be my next step, but something else struck a chord of inspiration, and I think you are going to love it. So stay tuned for my future videos on this build. subscribe, if I dare ask. The potential for this thing is unreal, and I am so excited to work on it and share it for those who choose to watch. I think that's everything of interest I want to specifically point out for this build that you don't get by just looking at it. I'm just so proud of what I've done here today, and I'm so excited to finally be sharing it with you all. Okay, I've ran my mouth like crazy in this video, so hopefully you've bared with me, and if you've made it this far, I hope that you've enjoyed. I'm going to wrap this up so I can keep working on this bad boy, so please leave your feedback below. It is always appreciated, and I will see you all later.